In this video, I'll give you a complete review. The LM laptop from Google, a neural network that never lies. Honestly, it really stands out quite significantly from all the different services we've used so far. ChatGPT, Claude, Perplexity, DeepSeek, and so on. They don't even come close. Why? Because it has a completely different approach, and what you can do with it opens up some really amazing possibilities. It allows you to study a lot of materials, analyze a great deal, and in general, let's go through everything step by step. So look, the main thing I use the LM laptop for is to analyze large volumes of data, because the biggest problem with ChatGPT, for example, at the moment, is that you can only upload a limited amount of data. Well, yes, of course, you might have 100, 200, 300 pages, in the cloud maybe 400 pages, but that's still limited data. And each time, a lot of tokens are spent to analyze all of this. Moreover, the neural network loses part of the information, the LM laptop. And in general, Google took a different approach. They have the Google search engine, which works as a search engine, and they went ahead and made, what if we make a small search engine for each person who needs it? So that's what they did. So the LM laptop is basically like making a mini Google for your own data set. And by connecting their own model, Google Gemini, to this, they made it so that the neural network, with the help of Gemini, can understand things correctly. Your queries, composing smart search queries based on the data you have, up to 30,000 pages, just in case. And then their Google model, which is the search system, gathers this information from the data you uploaded there. And then, again, Gemini analyzes and matches what should be included, and in the end gives you the result. So, the architecture has become very smart, impressive, and allows for some really interesting things. I will separately record scenarios and how to use them in different situations, but right now, the most important thing we'll do is go over what you can already do at this point. So, it's important to keep in mind that to access the model, you actually need a VPN service, and most often, if you're in Russia, a VPN from the US specifically. So not every VPN will work here. This is of course a big downside, but the big plus is that it's free. And with the free version, you can create an unlimited number. You can create as many of these notebooks as you want. I have quite a lot of them, but there are limits on the number of resources. For example, here we see 70 resources and so on. With the free version, you get up to 50. With the paid version, up to 300. But 300 and even 50 is just over the top. It's more than enough. Now I'll show you how to use it. So take a look at what we have here. When you log in, you register the same way as always using your Google account. And there's really nothing new here at all. Once you're in, here we have all. These are all the notebooks. My notebooks are basically the ones you've created. Featured are the ones shared by Google. They're meant to inspire you and show how you can use this tool. For example, here you have all of Shakespeare's works in one place, and you can simply compose, interact, and search through everything related to Shakespeare. Find any kind of information you need. So the possibilities for using these are really, really interesting. So we'll be going over how to create your own notebooks and how to work with them. Moving on. Here we have the possibility to display the items either as a list or as tiles. Here's the sorting feature, and of course there is create new, and the big create new notebook button. It's all referring to the same thing. It'll be more convenient in Russian. My interface is in English here, but that's not a problem, everything else is there. Next, for each notebook here, you can edit or delete it. Now, let me show you how this thing works. We create a new notebook, and here we are in the window. It says to me, would you like to, Pavel Mikhailovich? And here I need to add resources. And down below, there's a bar labeled source limit from 0 to 300. And in this way, I can add a certain amount of resources here. What can be considered a resource? Here's a good example. Let's open, for instance, my YouTube channel. Here there's a video. I can take this one, the video, Ctrl+E. I copied the link to this video. And right here, there's a YouTube button. So I can add PDF files, text, HTML marked files, audio, including MP3. So this thing will transcribe audio files for hours that you've uploaded. By the way, that's how we transcribed an entire book. All right, moving on. There are Google Docs, Google Slides, you can upload them. Naturally, these are Google tools, they're interconnected with each other. You can upload a website by providing a link to the site, and YouTube as well. That is a direct link to a YouTube video. So I can just drop a link to a specific video of mine on YouTube, and there you go, my video appears in the sources panel on the left. And I can add several more. By clicking the ADD button, I can add another one. And I can even just paste some text. or whatever I need. So, for example, I can search for more details about agents on Wikipedia if I want. What is that? Here it is, the agent one. It actually downloaded some information here, just not a whole lot though, really. But we take it and edit here as well. That's it, we paste it in here. And let's say I want to create information about my course. And basically I open my website iuniversite.ru, copy it and add it. A new source, here there's a website option and I can just paste the URL. And as you can see, I can easily paste several website links in a row so that they're all right here together. And we just paste it like this, and it immediately adds each of these sites. Now I want to draw your attention to this slider here. Source limit, yes, the number of sources. Mine is gradually filling up, so there's already something here. Great. Another button for adding sources here is Discover Sources. And here I can type, for example, neural network courses. And it can find them from the internet by searching a variety of websites and online resources, or from your Google Drive where you may have stored important files and documents. So let's try to find some sources on the internet and see what information is available there. So basically, like Google, it starts searching the internet for various sites for you, gathering all that information. And here you go, it has collected a certain number of these materials and websites, uploaded everything here, and also adds them to the sources. Now I'll explain why all this is needed. But the most important thing it has done is that now this is a knowledge base I can interact with. In other words, what ChatGPT couldn't do before was to limit it only to the knowledge base that we need to use. For example, if you're a nutritionist and you work within just one nutrition system, and as you know, there are many of them, you can upload this particular book here and ask it to generate materials based solely on this book. If you're a psychologist and you work only, for example, with Gestalt psychology or some other approach, or with family constellations and so on, you upload only those materials, only that book, and you interact only with them and get information from there, just like with ChatGPT, but only within the scope of the knowledge you've set as its limit. And it's added just like that, so simply. That is, you don't need to install this model locally on your computer, and you don't need to fine-tune it in some complicated way. You just upload the sources and voila, everything works. Well, that's really cool. So now let me show you how it works. I can select all the sources with checkboxes, or for example, just one. And so, for example, I select one of the available options and say, write 5 to 10 cases from the video, please. So I interact with it right here in the central area of the screen. And this central panel is very much like ChatGPT, where I can ask it questions or request information. By the way, it writes here pretty quickly. And here it gives me a total of 10 different cases that I talk about and discuss in this video. Now, let's do the following. Write out 5 to 10 detailed course programs on neural networks. Because I had uploaded websites of other neural network courses there, this way I am able to conduct research, and I am able to extract certain important data from the materials. And the coolest thing this model does is that it provides direct links to sources. In other words, this is something ChatGPT can do. It can't provide links to sources, but this thing does give links to those sources. So now I can check where it found this and where it found that. This one is from Sonoff, Data Science in Machine Learning. Aha, here it is. And now I can see the whole summary, all the information here. Super, excellent, yes. Now let's move on to the panel on the right in the studio. What's here? And this is also a handy feature that, well, ChatGPT probably lacks. So, for example, you found some conclusions for yourself. For instance, some great cases. And here there's a Save to Note button. So you can just copy this information, or you can save it as a note. And we click Save to Note, and then it gets saved here. So you can add, for example, some prompts here. Yes, like, I want to save this prompt so that later when I come back, I can just add it here as text. Some things that I've done for myself and some personal conclusions that I've reached, I add them here for reference. That way they accumulate here as sources for me. I can use them, but they're just notes. So basically the notebook is right here. Yeah, and LM is over here on the left. Just like that. And LM, yes, that's the language model. It's all on the left and the notebooks are on the right. This way I can get quite a lot from myself, some conclusions, documents, insights, and so on. What do we have here? 1, 2, 3, 4 buttons, and over time more will appear, so don't be surprised. Each of them will mean something. Let's start with the blue one, Audio Overview. Now, instead of selecting all the checkboxes, I'll just choose my video about NeuroX10. And now I'll create an audio overview based on it. Now this thing is processing and it will generate for me. Right now you can see the podcast, and then there's also a video overview. Let's click on it. So this thing will actually create a video based on these documents. Mind map, let's make a mind map. Then I can select all of the sources except for this particular video, and I can also create a detailed mind map for all of my competitors to see exactly what each of them has. Next, the following section here includes a comprehensive briefing, a helpful study guide, an FAQ, and a timeline. I'll explain each of them now. The last one is especially interesting for lawyers because, for example, the timeline allows you to easily create a detailed chronology of everything that is available to you. So, for example, if I have my Nira X10 video, I can simply take it and build a timeline. Here, there will be a sequential list of events that occur, and they will be arranged in order, step by step. And now, let's go through and see in detail what the model generated based on just a single click of these buttons. And in fact, what you get on the right and what you get in the chat is the big result of the work, which is actually very useful and quite helpful for your workflow. Now let's open it up. Nira X10, right? Here, it created a mind map of my video. Here, the impact of artificial intelligence, positive forecasts, negative forecasts. And this is really cool. I like it, right? And for example, I can ask it, could you please tell me where the 4 steps for implementing a neural network are? Tell me about the 4 steps. And I just click on this element in the mind map, and at that moment it sends a request to itself to study it. This material, and based on it, write a detailed essay about what is being discussed there. So in this way, you study using the mind map. The material, oh, we need to go deeper. We click there and dive in, and then we study it. So for studying, this tool is just indispensable, right? It's simply an irreplaceable thing, isn't it? You upload a huge number of exam questions or a textbook or an unstructured lecture from your lecturer. And now it allows you to understand and structure all of that. Now do you get the idea of just how awesome this thing is? Do you understand why I'm so excited about this? So this is the kind of thing it can do. I'll show a few examples a bit later on how to use a notebook and LM. For learning and studying, let's move on. What else does it do? For now, it generates audio and video overviews. We'll look at the next thing. For example, when I asked it to create this mind map based on all sources except my video. And it showed all those who use and in general who create various things. So you can see online courses, roles, professions. In other words, it somehow organized and structured all these materials. It showed what online courses are available. I can see here how many companies are involved in this field. Just look at how many there are. There's training, there's architecture for these things. So it took this unstructured information, somehow gathered and organized it, and now I can study it faster because it did that work for me. It showed me some things. Let's move on. Next. When we asked it to create an FAQ, meaning questions and answers, it turned out to be a perfect tool for a methodologist because it allows you to ask questions like, what are generative adversarial networks and how do they work? Here it explains. What problems exist with training? With these things, and here it goes right away. What practical machine learning projects are recommended to add to your portfolio? And here it lists a whole bunch of different things. Cool, great. Next is a carefully prepared chronological timeline based on events. And here it writes out the chronology of all events. That is, if any of these sources mention an event with a date, it remembers, saves it, and then arranges everything in chronological order. And we can see here that there are a huge number of different events already listed, showing who is involved and which people are present here. And in this way, you can see that here it's really a lot of different things are combined together here, and there is a huge amount of useful and valuable data. And another important thing is when he creates a briefing document. A briefing is when he briefly describes and summarizes all the same information, but in a written text form, making it easier to read and understand. What you had in the mind map, he turns into a brief. This is very convenient when, for example, you're making a summary of a meeting or a lecture. Here you go. This is a brief summary that you can use later. And we can see that this thing really speeds up the work a lot. And two more things, two functions that are also generated here are audio reviews and video reviews. These are really cool features. Now I'll show you some examples from other notebooks I've made for you to see, which work in a really fascinating way. For example, business as a spiritual game. I was taking a course and I needed to quickly listen to the lectures. And I used this notebook, this notepad, to do just that. I made an audio overview based on the materials that were available. As a result, instead of 4 hours of lectures, I got a 15-minute podcast with 2 speakers. I'll play it at a slightly higher speed, about 1.5 times faster. Some parts were interesting to listen to. Here's a 16-minute podcast covering everything discussed over 4 hours. Let's listen.
Hello. Today we have, I would say, a fundamental topic. Good afternoon. Yes, it's an eternal topic. Why is life the way it is? Why do some things happen and others don't? Some pleasant, some not so much. Yeah, these are questions that probably everyone asks themselves. And the materials we're looking at today offer a rather unusual perspective. Through our intention, right? And perception. Exactly. Through intention and the way we perceive reality in general. And here the concept of karma comes up, but perhaps not quite in the way we're used to. Basically, the task is to figure out how our inner world is connected to what happens to us on the outside. All right?
So, what does this mean? What we have now, you heard how fascinating and impressive it is. 2 experts, 2 engaging speakers are having a thoughtful conversation about the very topic that was discussed here. And it's actually really interesting to listen to. And this is exactly what an audio overview is. So in the end, you get this audio, download it to your phone or wherever, put on your headphones and listen to it like a podcast, or you can listen while driving and study this material in whatever way is most convenient for you. And this, of course, completely changes the approach to learning and how you can work with these materials, because it really is a very convenient and efficient way to do it. In fact, this method makes the entire process much easier and more accessible for everyone. Let's go back to our notebook that we just created together. The video overview is generated in pretty much the same way, but the only difference is that it creates slides. And it actually gives you real complete videos that you can easily upload directly to YouTube or use as a kind of engaging presentation for your audience. That's a cool feature as well. Let's do something else that's available here. There's an option to enable analytics, and this is an interesting feature, how this notebook is being used. And there's also sharing, and that's just an awesome feature. What can you share here? For example, you can easily share this notebook with others so that other people can use it, not necessarily in its entirety, but as a chat. Let me show you how that looks. So, for example, if you fed it a huge amount of knowledge about how to work, or maybe some books, or perhaps your internal standard documentation, but you don't want another person to have access to the sources, yet you want that person to be able to interact with it. In that case, we give the person access not to the sources in the LM notebook, but to the chat. And here I can ask, for example, could you please tell me what cases there are on this topic in this context? And it gathers cases from the materials that are available. So now, anyone can interact with this model completely freely, receiving the knowledge they need from it, but without having access to the original sources. But this knowledge is based on sources, so it's not something made up. Now, this can be used internally for employees, for some internal libraries, and as a result, it significantly speeds up the work. In other words, you can now create your own pre-trained models for yourself in this way. Now that we've covered all the main functions available here in detail, as we have discussed, what features there are and how it all works, you should have a good understanding of the process. And next, in the following lessons, I'll show you exactly how to use the notebook for specific specialists, so you can take it and put it to use. And your assignment for today is to create your very own notebook to try out and explore how to work with it in practice. And I kindly ask you to create this notebook and upload it right here. You can use several different YouTube videos that you like to create a detailed mind map of the YouTube videos that you like. You can find some others from my channel and send this screenshot of this mind map there along with the podcast that you will make in Elle's laptop. Well, I was with you, Pavel Lebedev. See you in the next lessons.